Hello and welcome to another lesson on learning Wagtail. In this video, we are going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a Wagtail workshop. Now, before we get started with this workshop, you can also find the written instructions in a Wagtail repo and a blog post on wagtail.io. I'll leave both the links in the description down below. But this video is basically just going to walk through that with you. So it's going to give you a little more context on how we do things. And you can see how I do things as well. So first things first, we are going to need to make sure we have Python installed. You probably already have Python installed, but in the event that you don't, you can go to python.org and where is download? And you can get the latest version of Python. In this video, I'm going to be using Python 3.6. It's a slightly older version, but it's a little more popular. So a lot more people are going to be able to immediately relate, but the version shouldn't matter too much. Just make sure you're using Python 3.6 or higher. So one of these two would be perfectly fine. Open up your terminal. I have a terminal open here, and I'm just going to type Python-V. And you can see that I'm using Python 3.6. I'll make that just a tad larger there. So I'm using Python 3.6. Next, you're going to want to go into any directory where you want this project set up. For me, that's going to be, I'm going to cd into websites so you can see where I'm working here. I'm in my users, Caleb Tallien websites, and it's already got a few things in here, so no big deal. There's my site and a project title and a Apple file. So let's go ahead and clear that. So I already have Python. Eventually you're going to need node.js, but we'll tackle that a little bit later. And next you need to make sure you have Wagtail installed. So I'm going to do a pip show Wagtail. And what version do I have here? I've got 2.5.1, but I know that 2.6.2 just came out. So pip install Wagtail is equal to 2.6.2. And by 2, I meant 2.6.1. Whoops, my bad. And so there we go. That's all installed. And if I do pip show Wagtail once more, we're going to see, hello, version 2.6.1. That's the one we were looking for. Next, we need to make sure we have Virtualenv installed because we're going to be using a virtual environment. And instead of using the typical pipenv, which I like to use, we're also going to use Virtualenv, which is another way of hosting a virtual environment with Python. And in my opinion, there's no good way, there's no better way, there's just different ways. So I'm going to do a quick pip show Virtualenv, and I'll show you what I have installed here. I have Virtualenv 16.6.1. But if you don't have that, if nothing shows up, you can always do pip install virtualenv. Okay, next we need to actually start our Virtualenv. We need to create one. So I'm just going to clear this terminal here. And I'm going to type Virtualenv Python is equal to Python 3 Wagtail env. And so this is just going to work some magic, create a virtual environment, and now we have access to a Virtualenv. So if I do ls-la in here, or if you're on Windows, I believe it's just dir, you'll see that in here, it's probably hard to see with that contrast there, but it says Wagtail env at the very bottom. Now we don't want to necessarily go into that. What we want to do is we want to source this. So we type source, Wagtail env, bin, activate. And now you can see that I'm actually inside of my virtual environment. Now, a quick little caveat here is when I used virtualenv -- python is equal to Python 3, the reason, I'm just going to get out of here with deactivate, the reason that we used Python 3 here is because in a lot of local computers, in your computer, you might have both Python-V, where you can do Python-V and it'll give you your version. You can also sometimes do Python 3-V. Now, if Python-V says Python 2 point whatever, you're going to want to type Python 3-V, and then you should see Python 3 point whichever version you downloaded. And when we created our virtual environment, we said use Python, but use the Python 3 path. So use the newest version of Python that we have. So that's that little caveat taken care of, and I just sourced back into my Virtualenv, and I hit clear so that you can see my terminal. A quick note, if you are on Windows, you are going to have a batch file, and I believe you have to source the batch file, and I don't recall perfectly off the top of my head, but I believe it's something like wagtail-env /scripts/activate, something along those lines. Okay, so I'm inside my Virtualenv here, and we need to make sure that we have the latest version of pip. So I'm going to do pip install -- upgrade pip, and all this is going to do is make sure we've got the latest version of pip, which it says I already do. That's fantastic. And then we're going to install Wagtail. So pip install Wagtail. And so we installed Wagtail twice. The first time was outside of our Virtualenv, and the second time was inside of our Virtualenv. When it's outside of your Virtualenv, you can spin up a Wagtail website from anywhere. You don't need to be inside of a virtual environment at all. While inside of the virtual environment, we need to reinstall Wagtail so that we can use Wagtail inside of the virtual environment. And it's just a cleaner way of separating your computer from the Python virtual environment. All right, let's go ahead and type Wagtail start workshop. And this is going to create a new folder, ls-la, if my fingers were placed properly. And now I have a new folder in here called workshop. So let's cd into there, cd workshop. And if I do ls-la, you can see that I've got a Docker file, home, manage.py, requirements, search, and workshop. Okay, next we need to run a management command to kickstart our database and sort of structure it the way that Wagtail requires it. So I'm just going to type python manage.py migrate, and you'll see a bunch of stuff. There it is, yep. And so that's just setting up our database for us. And then python manage.py, let's do run server, and we're going to do port 8000. By default, it's going to run on port 8000 anyways, but it's just kind of cool to explicitly say that. Typing 0:8000 is the same as typing 0.0.0.0:8000, which is essentially going to map it to your localhost. So now, with your browser open, go to localhost port 8000, and you can see, haha, we have a brand new Wagtail website set up with Virtualenv in just a couple of minutes. And we're going to want to click on admin interface, but we don't have a login yet, so we're going to need to go back to our terminal, cancel your server with Control-C. That'll just cancel your running server and get you back to your command line. And then you can create a new super user, python manage.py. Create super user, all one word. And nope, I don't want that. I want Caleb at learnwagtail.com. Whatever my password's going to be, once more. And I have a new super user, but we need to restart our server because it's currently not running. So just hit up arrow a few times, and then you can hit enter, and you don't have to type that out every single time. So quickly give this a refresh, make sure everything's working. And I type in my username and my password. And just like that, we are inside of Wagtail. And you can see down here that I'm using Wagtail version 2.6.1. Now to this point in time where we actually need to do some coding. So I'm going to cancel the server here, hit clear, and I'm using VS Code so I can use the shortcut code and then just dot to open up this whole folder. And next we are going to edit our home page. So in here we have our applications. We've got a home application, search application, and then we have our actual website and settings and templates and static files and all that stuff inside of a folder called workshop. We want to open up home and go into models.py. And we just want to select all of this, delete it, and paste in something new. These instructions that I'm going to paste in here, I'm pasting them in here simply because you don't need to watch me type them out. That's kind of boring, and we'll just run through these line by line together. And if at any point in time you want the actual code that I'm using in here, you can always go to the GitHub repository, which is in the description down below, or you can always check out the wagtail.io blog post, which is also in the description down below. So line by line, here's what we did. We said from the Wagtail package in the core module in the models file, import a class called page. From the Wagtail package in the core module in a file called fields, import rich text field. And we do this over and over again. So we basically just import a field panel here, which we're not currently using. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And When you open up your terminal, you're not actually going to see a whole lot has changed. Instead of running server, what we're going to do is python manage.py make migrations. One word, make migrations. And what this says is it actually created a new file for us here. This said, oh, there is already a homepage class, a model, and we're simply adding a field to it. We're adding a field called body to the homepage. And so that creates a file, but it doesn't actually apply it to our database yet. So let's go ahead and type python manage.py migrate, and that will take this file and apply it to our database. Just like that, nice and fast. Rerun our server. And let's go edit our homepage. Edit our homepage. Now, you're going to notice immediately that we have a field called body, and all we have is a field called title. We also have promote panels, settings, got a bunch of stuff in here, but we don't have a body yet. It's not editable. And so in the land of Wagtail, what we have to do is, just because this field is now in our database doesn't mean it's necessarily editable. So we need to go ahead and make this field editable. And we're going to do this by adding content panels. So every page comes with content panels, and all we're doing is saying, hey, also use the content panels, but make sure that we're using all the same ones that come from the original page class that we're using here. And then append a list to it. Append a list of one field panel, and that field panel is going to map back to this body here. So we can see that these match together. One is a string and one is an actual property. So we're just going to put the string version of the property name in here and just call it body, and we're going to give it an optional class name of full. The class name is not actually mandatory, but it does make the experience in Wagtail just a little bit better. So let's go ahead and reopen Firefox and refresh. And now we have a body in here. All right, and I'm just going to write a quick little thing in here. Hello world, let's make this an H2, and let's add some lorem ipsum. Let's go ahead and publish that page. Now, when we click View Live, we're going to see nothing has changed. And that's because in the land of Django, we need to change our models, views, and our template separately. Wagtail makes that nice and easy for us in the sense that we don't have to deal with models and views. It comes together, bundled together as a page. So now we're going to need to edit this template. So let's go into our templates. There's a directory here called home, and let's go into our home page. And instead of going through all of this homepage stuff, what I'm going to do is grab all of this and just paste this stuff in here. So again, you can find this in the repository, but we'll go through this line by line. Extends means basically we're going to take base.html, which is this file here, and we will reference that in just a moment. We're also going to load a file called wagtail core tags.py. And that allows us to use the functions that are inside of that particular file. And then we have a section here called content. So block content and then end block. So we wrap our content in a block. We've got h1 self.title. Self.title comes from, well, we can't actually see it in here. But if we do a quick jump to definition in here, this is the source code behind Wagtail. We can actually see that there is a title field in here already. So title is equal to models.char field, max length of 255, and it's got some help text in there. To do that in VS Code, all I did was hit F12. It might be mapped differently for you, so it might be function F12, it might be control F12, but there is definitely a jump to definition in there. You can also just right click and where are you? Jump to definition. Yeah, F12. And then we have our page.body. Now, whenever you see self and page, these are interchangeable in a Wagtail page. So self is simply referencing to this class, but because it's also a page, you can also use page. So instead of self.title, you could also write page.title if you wanted to. This is just an example of how you can use both. They are the exact same. So we're using page.body. That's this. That's what we added here. That's our rich text. That's our WYSIWYG editor with a lorem ipsum stuff in it. We use the pipe symbol and then rich text. And that is simply saying, hey, grab all of that HTML and then apply the function called rich text to it. So let's go ahead, save that and refresh. Look at that. We have a brand new homepage. It's ugly and we're going to work on that, but we do have a brand new homepage. All right, next let's head back over to our terminal and cancel this. I'm gonna hit clear so that you can see what I'm working on near the top of the video. And we want to start a new application at this point for our blog. Now, if I hop back over to VS Code, we can see that we have home and search. And if you open up base.py, this is our base settings. And actually, before we do this, I skipped a thing. I said we were going to quickly reference base.html. This block here, what this does is says, hey, because you're extending from base.html, that's this file here, we're going to take whatever you put inside of that block and inject it right into here. So you don't have to worry about creating your HTML hierarchy. You don't have to add your head, your body, your titles, things like that. You can simply inject code into particular areas of your template, which is really, really nice. All right, with that covered, let's head back over to our base.py settings. And this is where our base website is going to run. Now there's two different types of settings. Typically there are dev settings, so dev.py, and production settings, production.py, which we have both of, dev.py and production.py. In base.py, we can see that we have installed apps here, home, search, and then a bunch of Wagtail stuff, a couple third-party packages that Wagtail requires, and the Django stuff that Wagtail needs as well. This all comes pre-installed for you, which is really, really nice. But we're going to need to reference this again in just a moment. So in our terminal, we are going to type python manage.py, one word, start app, blog. And watch what this does in VS Code. We have a new folder in here called blog, and it gives us models, tests, views, apps, and admin, plus a folder called migrations. What we're going to need to do is open up blog/models.py, grab all that junk, and replace it with this text. And this basically is saying import your page, that's the Wagtail page. Let's grab the rich text field so that we can add an intro just like we did on our homepage. And let's grab our field panel so that we can make it editable. And this looks very much like the homepage. This is actually almost exactly the same as the homepage. Now it's exactly like the homepage. So we call this blog index page, and this is going to map to a template called blog index page.html. So Django is smart enough to say, oh, there isn't a template field in here specifying which file to use. So we're going to take all your capital letters and the space between it, and we're going to turn it all lowercase and turn the space between the capital letter and the previous lowercase letter and add an underscore in it. And then just add .html. So it works a little bit of magic there. Additionally, you could always do template is equal to your template folder. So maybe we would create a new folder in our templates folder. Where are you? Templates. We could create a new folder in here. We could call it blog, and then we could call it index.html. We're not going to do that, but you could do that if you wanted to specify a particular file, which in general I like to do. But in this workshop, we're not going to do that. Now this is all well and good, but this app is not actually going to register with Django until we tell it to register with Django. So let's go ahead and open up base.py, and under search, let's just type blog, comma. That's a string, so you need apostrophes around that. Let's go ahead, click save, go back to our terminal, and now we need to make our migrations again. Now the reason we need to make our migrations is because we have a brand new class in here. This is going to map to a database table. So we do python manage.py, make migrations, and this is going to make a file just as it did there, made our first file in our blog app in our migrations folder called 0001 underscore initial.py, and it does a bunch of stuff in here. And this is just going to tell Django how to map our database. It's not actually doing anything right now. It just made the instructions on how to do it. So let's go ahead and type python manage.py, migrate. And there we go. We have applied our changes to our database. Go ahead and run your server once more. And let's go back to here, and we can hit refresh. We'll see nothing has changed, but if we add a child page, we can now see that we have a blog index page and a home page. This blog index page did not exist a moment ago. So let's create a new blog index page, and let's just call this blog. Simple and elegant, and the intro is going to be welcome to my blog. Let's make that an H3 and paste some lorem ipsum in there. Let's go ahead and publish this page and view live. And when we view live, we are going to see it does not work just like our home page. And it's because it's looking for a template in a folder called blog. And the file name is blog-index-page.html. Now it's actually going to tell you exactly where it's looking for this, which is super helpful. So I'm just going to make this bigger, actually, make that one step smaller. And you can see that it's looking in users, Caleb, websites, workshop. This is our project name. This is our settings in here, and then a folder called templates, and then a folder which we don't have called blog, and then a file called blog index page. That's the first place it's looking. And then it's going to look in our home, and then it's going to look in our search application. And so that is mapping to here. So it's looking for workshop, where are you? Templates, and then if there was a folder in here called blog, and then a file called blog index page.html, that's where it would be looking. That's the first place it's going to look. It's also going to look inside of blog and home and search, which are 3 other applications that we have running, and we know that we have them running because it's in our installed apps. So we are going to create a new file in here. And we're actually going to create a series of folders. So this is in our blog app, and we're going to create a folder called templates, and then another folder called blog, and then the actual file called blog index page.html. And inside of this, we are going to just paste a little HTML in here, a little Django styled HTML. So we're going to extend from base again. So we're going to use our base template structure, so we don't have to change a whole bunch of stuff. We don't have to rewrite. We don't have to copy and paste. We can just basically inject a bunch of code into the content section. Then we're going to use the page title, which again, just as a quick reference, you can use self.title if you wanted to. We're going to use page.title. And because this is the blog index page, that maps back to here, we can also use intro, which we see in here. Page.intro is the same as self.intro in the world of object-oriented programming. That might make a little more sense to you if you come from an OOP background. So we're using page.intro and then rich text, which is a function that comes from the Wagtail core_tags.py file, which we're loading into this particular template. And then we're going to loop through all of our blog posts, which we don't have yet. So this loop actually is not going to show anything, but if we did have child pages, it would show the post title and the published at date. So let's go ahead and save this, open up Firefox. I'm going to zoom back out here. Hit refresh. Oh no, it doesn't seem to work. If that's the case, all you have to do is cancel your server and rerun it. It's because it takes inventory of your templates when your server first starts running and needs just a little kick in the behind to realize that there is something that is actually changed. So I refresh the page here and boom, we have a blog page. And you can actually see in the URL, it's localhost:8000/blog. All right, let's go back to our blog/models.py. And let's make some space down here. Let's make 2 lines. And we're going to add a blog page. And this is going to have an intro, different type of intro. So it's not a rich text field. It is a char field. So you don't get bold, italics, H2s, horizontal rules, paragraphs, things like that. But the body does. The body is going to be a rich text field. That comes from Wagtail itself. We're also using models in here, which does not come from Wagtail. This one from Django.db import models. Import models. Then we're saying in the blog page content panels, use the regular page.content panels, which is our title, and then also append the intro and the body to it. Now, if you were to open up your browser again and hit add child page, it'll say that you can add a blog page, but when you click it, it's going to give you a 404. It's because the database doesn't understand that this page is written in the code yet. And so all we're going to do here is I'm going to open up my terminal, hit clear, and I want to make migrations once more time because we have a new model in here. So it makes a new migrations file. We then have to migrate that file, so we're applying the changes. Rerun our server, and let's go ahead and just waiting for it to kick in. There it is. First blog post. You can see I've already made one in Firefox called my first blog post somewhere in time. Welcome to my first blog post. And in here, let's just add some lorem ipsum. Yeah, let's add a few paragraphs of it. And I don't know, let's maybe make some of this bold so we can see. this beautiful editor maximize its power. Let's go ahead, add a horizontal rule. Good enough. Let's go ahead and hit publish. Now again, what happens when we hit live? As expected, this happened with the homepage and this happened with our blog index page. This is not actually a problem. This is completely expected behavior. So now we need to go where our blog index page is and create a new file called blog_page.html. Now I got that name by taking blog page here, the name of the class, and turning it into, I believe it's called snake case, where it's all lowercase separated by underscores. Yeah, let's close that. That's not needed. I guess we can make that a little bigger. Let's go to our blog page and let's add some stuff in here. So this blog page is also going to extend from base.html. It's also going to load our Wagtail core tags, which allows us to use, where is rich text? There you are. We're going to, in a content block, use page.title, page.firstpublished@, we haven't seen that yet. We're using page.intro, page.body, pipe rich text, which is going to turn boring HTML into rich text, and then a link back to the parent URL. So let's go ahead and save that and refresh here. Now again, if you end up refreshing this page and it says missing template, just go ahead and restart your server and this should work for you. And so now we have my first blog post, the date that it was published, August 6th, 2019. We've got the intro, and then we've got a bunch of rich text and a link back to our blog. So now we can go back to our blog, and not only does our blog have a title and the body of its page, but it also has a link to the first blog post, which I can click into, and I can go back and forth now. Now I'm just going to go back here, and I'm going to create 2 more blog pages. Second, yeah, sure, let's use that. Apparently I've written that already. Welcome to my second blog post, and lorem ipsum as our filler, because why not? Let's go ahead and publish that. Let's go back to our blog, hit refresh, and you can see my first blog post, my second blog post. And let's go ahead and let's just add one more in here. Third blog post. Welcome to my third blog post. And lorem ipsum makes the world go round. And then we are simply going to publish this page so it's live. And let's go back to our blog. And we have 3 blog posts at different times. So this is going from the first blog post to the last blog post. And at this point, you probably don't want that. In a blog post, you want this to be in reverse order. So you want the newest one to be at the top and the oldest one to be at the very back or the very bottom. So we are going to have to go to, let's open up VS Code here. Let's go to blogmodels.py. And in here, we're going to change the ordering. And so we're going to def get context. It's going to take self as well as request. And we're going to grab the current context by using super.getContext. It does autofill. I love that autofill. Request. And so what this is doing is saying, hey, page already comes with a function or a method called getContext. We're going to use that exact same name. And then we're going to run getContext from the page class. So in the page class, there is a method in here called getContext. We're simply saying, hey, go up to page and use page.getContext, which is a lot like saying this, page.getContext. And so that just bubbles up, and that's going to store anything that it provides in a variable called context. And next we're going to go ahead and let's just get our live blog pages, because right now it's going to show all of our child pages, but let's go ahead and get live blog pages is equal to self.getChildren. And that's a method, so we use parentheses. And then .live, and that just means only show published pages, not drafts, not the newest version of a draft, only ever show pages that are actually live. Let's go ahead and update our context. So we're going to put blog pages in here, and this is going to be live blog pages dot order by, and this is why I didn't want you to watch me type things, because this is going to be slow. First published at, and then we're going to return our context. So to sum this up, page already has a method called getContext. Well, so does our blog index page now. We also overwrote this with the exact same name. We said, oh, it's the exact same name, bubble up and get page.getContext with the same request information. Then we're going to get all of our child pages. Our child pages refer to these 3 pages in here. So if I open up the Explorer here, we have our home page and then we have a blog index page. This is our listing page. And underneath that page, we have 3 blog pages. These are children pages, child pages. And that's because the blog page, currently, the way we have our site structured, is living under the blog index page. So this is the parent, and the blog page is the child. And so we're saying get all of the children, make sure that they're all published, and if there are any in there that aren't published, ignore them. Then we said, hey, we already have context, so we're going to add a new variable to our context, which we can then access inside of our template, which we'll get to in just a moment. And that's going to be all of our blog pages, but then we're going to reorder by the first published at date. And that comes with Wagtail page. Just like how we have title, just like we have title in our source code here, we also have, it's got to be in here somewhere, first published at, there it is. And it is a date time field. And this is the actual Wagtail core code that you can look at. And so we're saying order by the first published at date, but make it in descending order. So we're going to save that. We do not need to run migrations because we're not adding any fields. We're not changing anything. We're just saying how you currently operate, just change that. And that is strictly code. It has nothing to do with how we actually store the data. And then in our blog page, we simply need to, nope, not our blog page. Then in our blog index page, we need to change this for loop from for post in page.getChildren to blog pages. And the reason we're using blog pages here is because we have created a variable for our template called blog pages. It does not use self, it does not use page, so it's not self.blogpages because it is not a model property. We are simply saying, pass this in, this exact variable name into the template. So let's go ahead, save that. And let's go back to our blog and refresh. Ta-da! So our third one is our newest one. Our second one is in the middle like it was before. That just happens to be circumstantial. That's always going to be in the middle with just 3 blog posts. And then our first one is at the very bottom. All right, now this is all groovy and we've worked with a bunch of pages and nested pages, child pages, things like that. But let's go ahead and add an image because websites can make use of images these days. This isn't 1994 anymore. We can use images to our heart's content. So in our blog post model, make sure we're in the blog post model, not the index page, because now that we have 2 models in here, we can work on either one. We added our get context to the index page because that's where all the listing is in our template. We wanted to loop through all of our blog posts in the blog index page. So we added get context to the blog index page. But in our blog page, we want to add an actual image. So in here we have our image, and this is simply using models.foreignkey, and this is going to map to the Wagtail images module and the image class. We're saying null is equal to true. Yep, it is optional. Blank is equal to true. Yep, it's optional. So null is optional in the database. Blank is optional when we edit our blog page in our admin. And then when we delete this image, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with this field? Well, we're not going to cascade. We are simply going to say, set this field as null, and null is allowed to be true, so that's okay. So let's put that up there. And we are going to need, instead of a field panel, I mean, we could do something like this, but this is not really an elegant way of handling an image inside of Wagtail. Wagtail has a much nicer way of dealing with this. We can use a thing called a image chooser panel, which we actually don't have imported at this point. And you can actually see, there it is, there's the underline. And so we need to go up to our imports and do from wagtail.images.edit handlers, import image chooser panel. Go ahead, click save, and let's open up our browser and let's edit our first blog page. Oh no, we have a database issue. This is saying there's no such column. Blog page, so that this is the blog app, and the table name is the blog page. Actually, the whole thing is the table name, but that's how it maps it out in Django land. And there's no image ID. We add an image, but it's not actually in the database yet. So whenever you see something like this, you open up your terminal and you make migrations. And then you apply your migrations. And then you rerun your server. And when we refresh this page, we will see an image chooser panel. Come on, load faster. Okay, so we have an image section down here and an image chooser. So we can click choose an image. We don't have an image to choose, so let's upload a new one. And I'm going to upload an image called flower. Let's go ahead and hit save. Now when we view live, I'm going to close these other ones. When we view live, we're not going to see this image again because the template is very explicit. It doesn't want to be bloated with nonsense that may or may not be used. So what we're going to do is add this image in there. We're going to explicitly add it into the template. So open up blog_page.html. And where it says load Wagtail core tags, we also need to load our Wagtail images tags. And then in here, we can add an image very easily by doing image page.image, fill, and let's fill it like 320 by 320, something like that. And so this template tag here is basically saying, run the function called image. Its first parameter is page.image. Again, that could be self.image. It doesn't really matter. And then we're saying, fill it with a section that's 320 by 320. So if it's bigger than that, it's going to crop it down to 320 by 320 and make sure that there's always 320 pixels by 320 pixels filled up. There's actually a lot more Wagtail image options. It's not just fill. You could set the max, you could set the width, you could set all sorts of stuff in there, and I would highly recommend checking out the docs for that one. So I'm just going to save that, reopen Firefox, and boom, I hit refresh, and we have an image. And the nice thing about this is it cropped the image for me. So if I wanted to do something crazy, so let's do 320 pixels wide by 120 pixels tall, I'll just resave this, refresh, and look at that, it crops it again for me. Undo that because that didn't look very good. But here we go, we have picture of a flower, 320 by 320. Now cropping has literally never been that easy in probably any content management system in the history of content management systems. But okay, so we're looking at our code here and our page looks like it's still from the 90s. There's no styling whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add milligram. And milligram is just a nice little CSS framework or a library. And we can open up base.html here. And it's just going to make our page look a little nicer. So above global style sheets here, I'm going to paste this stuff. Fix my indenting because as a Python programmer, indenting is important to me. And all this is doing is adding a CSS reset, so it normalizes it for all browsers. And then we're going to add milligram.min.css through a content delivery network, a CDN. And then we want to do just a little touch up in our base.html here. So let's add a container. So I'm going to add a class called container. So div with a class of container, and we just put our block stuff inside of that. And when we created a new Wagtail site, we were actually given, where is it here? In our workshop folder, we have static CSS, and it automatically created a CSS file for us called workshop.css. Now that's pretty nice. It's empty, but it's nice that it created it for us. So I'm going to add a little styling to our container and a little styling to any sort of H2 that we've already written in our templates. Go ahead, hit save, open Firefox, and you might need to refresh a couple of times for the styling to actually kick in, but I'm just going to refresh once and look at that, it works. And all of a sudden this actually looks a lot more like a blog. It's crazy how far a little bit of styling can go. So we have a blog in here, and let's go to our second post. There's no image in there. Let's go to our first post. There is an image in there. All right, we have one more little thing we need to do in here. We have a home page, and we want to actually link to our blog. We don't have a navigation. We're not going to go through adding a navigation in this workshop, but in our home page. So let's open up home_page. We can sort of cheat a little bit, and we can loop through our child pages. So we had a for loop for, we can't call it page, that's a reserved name, so let's call it child page in self.getChildren. And we're simply going to loop through the child pages. And this is just our home page. This is going to create a quick navigation just so that we can access the blog with a link. or any other child pages that we might create. Maybe you want to create a series of blogs. It will create a series of blogs for you. So href, leave that blank for a moment. We'll call this childpage.title. Close that tag, and then in here, we're simply going to add the childpage.url. And let's open up Firefox and refresh. And there it is, we've got a blog. So now we can click into our blog. We have a blog there. We can go into our first blog post that has an image and rich text. And now here comes the fun part. We need to figure out how to deploy this to the internet. And we're going to deploy our website using a service called Netlify, which allows us to create static websites and host them on the internet for free. But the problem is, Wagtail is not a static website. It is a dynamic website. You can change anything in it. You can change the content. You can change who sees what based on what kind of user they are, if they are a user, if they're signed in, if they're not signed in, what browser they're from. You can do all sorts of things like that. And so that makes it very dynamic. But our website right now is very static. Basically, we just added a little bit of content, and it's not likely to change until we add another blog post. So let's open up our terminal, hit cancel, and I'm going to clear that so you can see what I'm working on at the top here. And we need to install Wagtail Bakery. This has some really good goodies in it. So we're going to do pip install -- upgrade, and then we're going to say install from Git. Don't install from PyPy, but install from Git. And we're going to give it a URL of https://github.com/wagtail/wagtail-bakery. And you can see it's working some magic there. It's installing everything it needs to install. So, oh, all right, that was faster than I thought it was going to be. So now we have to go back and let's just close a bunch of these because they're not necessary anymore. In our base.py, we need to install, or allow rather, Wagtail Bakery and the other bakery that it depends on, which is Django Bakery. So we got Django Bakery here. It's just called Bakery, and then Wagtail Bakery. Next, we need to make sure our setup tools are installed and up to date. So pip install setup tools -U setup tools. And so this is going to already have it. So you'll see a bunch of text on your screen downloading it. I already have it. So I guess that's good news. And going back to our base.py, I'm just going to scroll down to somewhere near the bottom. Or actually, maybe the very bottom. I'm just going to paste in a couple things in here. So our build directory, this is where we are going to be building our entire static Wagtail site. It's going to create a bunch of files for us. And I'm saying on my computer, put it in the TMP folder, the temp folder, and then a folder called build. And just throw it in there. It's just temporary stuff that we can discard rather quickly. So I'm just going to put it in a temporary folder there. And then the bakery views, this is necessary. We are going to grab all of the published pages and we're going to turn them into static HTML pages. Now, if we go back to our terminal and you've done everything right, we can run our server. Good, we see no problems at all. So let's just cancel that. And then we need to run a new management command. So python manage.py build, and this comes with bakery. And so this is apparently going to build things, but I didn't see anything in there. So I'm going to cd into that directory, the one that I specified in the base.py settings. And look at that, we've got a blog folder, media, static, index, we've got all sorts of stuff in there. So I'm just gonna jump back there to my virtual environment. And I did that with cd dash, and that just sort of brings you back to like the place you were just at. And now at this point in time, we need to make sure that we have npm installed and node installed. If you go to nodejs.org, you can download Node.js. 12 is the current sort of edge release, and 10 is the LTS. I always go for the LTS just as the long-term support. And so you're going to want to download this and install it. I already have Node on my computer, so I don't need to do that, but you might need to do that. And to show you what version of Node I'm using, I'm using this other service called Node Version Manager, so I can use multiple versions of Node. I am currently using Node version 10.15.3. Now the next command you're going to want to run is npm install netlify -cli -g. That's going to globally install this on your computer for you. So not just in this particular project that we're working on, but it's going to be accessible on your computer from anywhere. Now, in order for this to run, you are going to need Node.js installed. Otherwise, this is just not going to work because npm will be a missing command. It doesn't know what to do with npm yet. So Node Package Manager install netlify.cli/g. And this is just going to take a little while. All right, so I have npm installed, and through the magic of editing, you didn't have to watch that happen for 43.19 seconds. Now at this point in time, you can type netlify status, and this will say, I'm not logged in. Okay, netlify login. And this just brings up Netlify. Now, if you don't have a Netlify account, you're going to need one, but if it ever asks you for a paid account, just make a free account. You're going to want to log in, probably with GitHub, I can imagine. I'm using GitHub anyways. And so I'm going to authorize. And it says, basically, authorization granted. So logging in was really, really easy. And so now if we do Netlify status once more, we're going to see that I'm actually logged in. All right, next we need to Netlify init. And so we're just saying, this project is not currently using Netlify, but we would like it to use Netlify. So this is going to ask us a couple of questions here. And the first one is, do you want to create a Netlify site without a Git repository? And we're going to say, yes, we want to create and deploy the site manually. We don't need a Git repository, although using Git is always a good idea. In this case, we're not using Git yet, we're just keeping it simple. So we're going to select that first one, and then it's going to ask us for a team. Well, in Netlify, I only have the one team. It's my team. It's just me in there. So I'm going to select that one. And then it asks us what kind of basically subdomain do we want. It's going to be yoursite.netlify.com. And if you leave it blank, it's going to create something amazing, which I've never seen such an amazing suggestion before. Caleb Tallien makes great websites.netlify.com. I actually love that. But instead, what we're going to do is rename this to Wagtail Workshop. And just like that, apparently we have a website. So if we went in here and copied this into our browser, we are going to see nothing. When this loads, we'll see nothing. Yeah, page not found. That's because we haven't deployed anything. This is just set up. This is saying Netlify has an account and a little bit of space on their servers reserved for us. So I'm just going to clear that once more. And we are going to deploy. So netlify deploy. We're going to give it a directory with --dir. Directory is equal to. And this is going to match the directory that we put in our settings. So I've got /tmp/build, and in here it's /tmp/build. That's telling it where to look for our static files. So you're going to want to make sure that those match. Let's go ahead and hit enter, and it's going to build. It's uploading files. All right, so we have logs that we can check out. We can always check out basically a staging site, the live draft URL. So let's go ahead and copy this URL into our browser. And we are going to see, whoa, look at that. Our website is now on the internet. It's not technically live because it has this ugly thing, and there's no way anyone's ever going to remember that hash. But if you click into your blog and you go into your first blog, look at that. There's the image. Everything is on the internet, and it seems to be working fine. And then lastly, it's saying, hey, if you actually want to deploy this to wagtailworkshop.netlify.com, all you have to do is type netlify deploy --prod, and we also want to give it that directory again. So /tmp/build. And this is saying, deploy this to production. This is the actual URL that we want. And we can see that here, live URL. Let's go ahead, copy that. Just close down a few of these windows here. And we go to wagtailworkshop.netlify.com, and we have our workshop in here. How cool is that? You can go to your blog. You can have your first blog post. You can essentially, at this point, run your entire personal website, a portfolio website, a blog from your computer without actually having to deal with any servers at all using Netlify. Now, if you're like me, you like a little bit of automation and you don't want to run that command every single time. So what we're going to do is we are going to make sure that this deploys every single time we save a page. So in a models.py file somewhere along the way, let's put it in our blog models.py. Let's close the home page and let's just keep the blog open. And at the very bottom, I'm going to add a bunch of lines here. We are going to create what is essentially Django's version of a hook. So I'm actually just going to grab those imports, and I don't like them being at the bottom there. Wagtail. So we have this thing called a signal. So we're importing a signal, which is basically a hook. When something happens, we can take a particular action. Django, I'm going to move that up here. So the Django.core.management, we're going to use the call command, and then a sub-process to basically execute something on our computer. All right, so we have all those, and let's go back down to the very bottom of our page here. Now we have a function called deploy. It's going to take the sender and a bunch of keyword arguments. It's then going to create the call command called build. So it's going to run python manage.py build. And it's going to know to build all of it in our temp/build directory because that's what we said in our base.py. Next is going to open up a new process on your computer, and it's going to run netlify --dir is equal to temp/build. And so this is going to deploy to staging every single time you save a page. And so that should just work out of the box for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the next section where we add a stream field. So we are already in our blog/models.py, and we want to convert body from a rich text field to a stream field. And stream fields are probably the most perfect way of rearranging or free-forming data or templates or content sections on your website. Basically, you can mix and match. So you can have a heading, a paragraph, an image, a paragraph, a heading. You can mix and match those in any way, shape, or form that you like. And so we are going to create our first stream field now. And again, instead of having to watch me type all that out, I just pasted that in there from the repository. And all it is body is equal to, and that's the same name that it was before, but instead of being body is equal to rich text, we have body is equal to stream field. And in here, it takes a list of tuples, and the first item in your tuple is the name of your stream field, and then what that stream field is going to be. And so we've got a heading, we've got a paragraph, and we've got an embed in here. Now, that's nice, but we have not imported stream field, blocks, or embed yet. And just like our image chooser panel, we are eventually going to want to swap out field panel for stream field panel. And we probably don't need the class name of full. Now again, if I save my VS Code, my linter is going to say, oh, actually, you don't have a stream field panel. You also don't have an embed block, you don't have blocks or a stream field at all. So let's go ahead and in our imports here, and again, I've just copied these imports from the repository, but you can see that we have wagtail.core.fields. That matches this one up here. So let's merge those two together. From wagtail.core, import blocks, import the entire module. And so we don't have that one in there yet. Edit handlers, we do have edit handlers. Look at that. Wagtail.admin.edit handlers. We've got field panel up here. So let's grab that one. Combine those together. And we don't have wagtail.embeds.blocks yet. So we're going to leave that one. So let's go ahead and save that. And when you try to edit your page, you're going to run into a problem. And that problem was, silly me, I did not restart my server. Python manage.py run server, and I'm not going to give it any parameters in there. It's just going to automatically go to localhost port 8000. Okay, so we have a body in here for heading, paragraph, and embed, and it all looks like it's working, but this is just code being code. When we try to save this, you're probably going to run into a problem, and that's because we changed this from a rich text field, so basically a text field with HTML, into a different type of field where you can mix and match stream fields. So in your terminal, let's go ahead and clear, and we need to make our migrations. And then we need to migrate. Ta-da! And then we need to run server. Go ahead, refresh. It looks like nothing changed, but let's do this. Here is a heading. We're not going to save this yet because we are going to run into a problem if we do. A bunch of lorem ipsum in there, and maybe let's add an embed. And this embed is just going to be a YouTube video that I've made. Now, I'm not going to hit save yet because we are sort of getting ahead of ourselves in the sense that if I open up blog templates blog page.html, it's still referencing page.body rich text. There's no rich text in there though. So we want to take this line, delete it, and we're going to replace it with a for loop. So we're going to loop through every body element, every stream field that we have. We're going to call it child. For each child that we have, we're going to check to see if the block type is a heading. That heading is going to match this text right here. We could also see if the name matches the paragraph. We could match it against the name embed, but we're only going to do child block is equal to heading right now, and we're simply going to render whatever that child is. Otherwise, render it normally. So this time, whenever we see a heading, we're going to wrap it in an H2 element. And everything else is going to be pretty boring. It's just going to do whatever Wagtail does out of the box. No styling. And we're actually going to run into a problem with our embed. And we'll tackle that in just a moment. So I'm going to save the blog page.html and blog models.py. Let's head back over to our Wagtail admin and let's go ahead and hit publish. And as it's publishing, we can see that, oh, look, there's a deploy path build. It's updating and we have a live draft. And it did all of this automatically for us. We didn't have to check anything. We didn't have to tell it to do anything. We already said, hey, every time a page is saved, why don't you go ahead and deploy it to a Netlify staging site? And which page did we modify? That was this page. There we go. So we have here's a heading. That is our heading. That's an H2. We can also double check to make sure that's an H2. Yep. In our console, that's an H2. And then we've got rich text, and then we've got an embed with a bunch of ugly space underneath. That's because this is missing some styling. Now, lastly, let's go ahead and fix up that styling. So let's view live, and we can see there's all that spacing in there. So let's open up our editor again, and because Wagtail was kind enough to create workshop.css for us, I'm going to paste in a bunch of stuff in here. And so this is straight from the Wagtail docs. And this is saying any rich text image, make it max width of 100%, height is auto, so make it responsive. Any sort of responsive object, make sure that the position is relative. And if there's any child element called iframe object or embed, simply position it absolute. So let's go ahead and save that, and we're going to see that this video looks much better and there's not a lot of gross spacing underneath that. And now if we ever wanted to redeploy, all we have to do is go ahead and click publish, or we could run this command manually. And we're actually going to run the deploy command manually. So we can see this. Let's go ahead, grab that text. And let's go to our blog. Let's go to our first blog post, and that looks a lot better. But it's not deployed yet. We need to deploy. So Netlify, deploy -- prod as it suggests, but then let's also use a specific build directory that we have set up our project to use. And I typoed that very badly. So build. Look at that. Okay, so it looks deployed. Let's go ahead and copy this URL, and this is going to be our final step to see if this works the way we expect it to. All right, so far so good. So far so good. Boom, look at that. You can now go to wagtailworkshop.netlify.com to view all of this progress. I'm going to leave this up here. I might change it over time a little bit, but I'm going to leave this up here so that you can reference this website at any point in time. I'll probably update some of this content as well with links to the Wagtail blog post, with links to this particular video, links to the repository, things like that. But essentially, we have our first live website. using Netlify. Now I have two more things I want to talk about real quick. Generally, the next thing we want to do is create a proper menu system. You can go to wagtailmenus.readthedocs.io. So let's go to wagtailmenus.read. I hope I remember this right. readthedocs.io. wagtailmenus.readthedocs.io. And that looks right. And so you can create an entire menu system using a pip package for Wagtail. That's pretty amazing, actually. Not that menus are hard to make in Wagtail, but this just gives you a lot of power right out of the box, which is really cool. So you just have to install that. The other thing is a repo that Springload creates called Awesome Wagtail. And it's just github.com/springload/awesome-wagtail. And you can see all sorts of Wagtail repositories, everything from e-commerce to payments, to blogs, to images, to all sorts of things in here. There's all sorts of resources for you in there. And so essentially your next step would be to get a menu system up and running, and then maybe take a look at some of the tools in here and see if you can get them to work, and maybe modify your website with some third-party packages, because that can be pretty fun. All right, so that is all there is to creating a Wagtail website from scratch using Virtualenv and deploying to Netlify. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Caleb Tallien. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this entire workshop. And hey, if you like this video, don't forget you can share, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Come join us on Slack at wagtail.io/Slack. All the resources I've mentioned are in the comment section down below. And if at any point in time you want to expand your Wagtail experience, you want to learn about more complicated stuff or just all the features that are out there, I have a great series called Learn Wagtail. You can find it at wagtail.io/course or learnwagtail.com.